So the manual is called Scripting Violence, Rehearsing Change. I think, yeah, I'm going to comment the title a bit later on. So what are the challenges that we are meeting in our work with perpetrator? We did a focus group with people. Of course, I've been also talking with many people that work with perpetrator, and a bit what came out was this: tackling denial, lies, manipulation, control, sabotage, narcissism, blame shifting, minimization, and victimization during sessions. This was one big issue. Another one was working on gender, masculinity, privilege, and power without causing resistance. This is a big issue as well. When we work with men in particular, we tend to face resistance as soon as we talk about gender, about privilege. Sometimes we can even reinforce resistance. It's easy to get stuck. So this was also something we want to find some tools to work on. The last one, the third one, developing empathy, the capacity to feel others' emotions and their own. So the manual proposes all kinds of complex one, or the most complex we've been using. And so basically we always start with games. So why do we use games? We use games because they are social metaphors. They are a sort of mirror. They mirror social relationships. So they are very, very accessible for anybody. Anybody can understand a game. At least we have to start, of course, with easy games, but they allow to build knowledge collectively. They create a positive atmosphere. So what do I mean by creating knowledge collectively? It means that after playing a game, there's a challenge in the game most of the time that they have to face collectively or individually. We're gonna analyze the game afterwards, and they're gonna bring some knowledge. The participants are gonna analyze the game, and they're very good at that. And they will understand the power dynamics at stake in the game, and they will bring knowledge in the room. And so they will feel very much involved because they are also building the session. So this is a very important point for us. Perpetrators in our work are not considered as bad, ignorant people that have to fill with contents, but people that are involved in games and in facing challenges where they can train, they can rehearse some new strategies. They can try again and again in the games and in the theater. So let's go to the theater part. The theater makes the invisible visible, as Chekhov would say, because gender, masculinity sometimes is sort of normalized, naturalized. So it seems people pretend it doesn't exist sometimes. We had this issue in Somalia where we asked people, what happens when a man borns? I mean, men are men. They were pretending that, okay, there was a big difference, that it was not something cultural, it was natural, that males were different and males were warriors and so forth. So I asked them, okay, what is the first thing that happens in Somalia when a boy borns? And so this is the first thing that happens. When a boy borns, they discover he's a boy. They shoot with the guns in the air, and they offer him an AK. So don't misunderstand me. I take this example from Somalia because there, of course, working on gender is not always very welcome. But I think sexism is really something that is everywhere. And I come from Holland and France, and sexism is really very strong there also. So this is not about Somalia, but I think these pictures are very clear. So when through theater, we ask them, show me what happens when a child borns, for instance, and we immediately have an idea of, we have a scene where we can show that gender is a construction. Another example of why theater is really, really helpful is that sometimes people might deny something. They might say, here, I had another case. Sorry, it's again in Somalia, but the best pictures I have are from my work in Mogadishu. So they said, yeah, women can participate in decisional process. So here, just try to forget about that woman wearing black clothes, okay? And just look at this picture. So here in this picture, men are talking, are taking some decisions, And there are two women, indeed, they are involved in the decision process. But as you can see from the picture, from the image they make, and this is a scene, this is theater, the two women, they are outside of the circle. Normally, they have some chairs, even that are distant from the round table or whatever. And so this woman is intervening from the audience, and this man also, and they are trying to change that. But basically here, while people pretend, yeah, women are involved, but they don't talk. So we are gonna stage it, and so we're gonna see that, yes, they are involved, yes, they are there, but they are not in a position where it's possible for them to talk. They are already excluded. So physically, theater reveals already some contradictions. So this is a very important point. Sometimes we're struggling we don't want to demonstrate our clients that there is a contradiction in what they say. So theater will help us. So we'll ask people to play scenes, and the scenes are going to speak and say everything. Well, the body also, there's a part on image theater you will see. Image theater use the body, we sculpt the body. Many people know it without working on theater. I think in psychology it's a common tool. The body reveals, gives a lot of information. So that's why we want to use theater and games to broker. We are not telling them, but are you sure this is true, or are you sure this is really happening? We just show scenes and we ask them, okay, now show me what happens in this case or this one, and we get a lot of information from them, and so we can question. So why do we use games? So I believe, and we are many, at least many theatrical people that work with theater, that violence is a learned behavior. It is something we have been witnessing, perhaps when we have been children. It is we have been hearing it. We have been hearing about it. We have been taught at school. There's a sort of gender police that can be very violent if we are not behaving in a very masculine way, for instance, or we are not respecting the gendered rules. So it's a very complex learning process, and so theater and games help it to be a complex unlearning process. Also, as a theater maker, I think gender and violence is a performance that has been rehearsed a lot of time. So the answer, the response, the non-stereotypical response to a challenge has to be also rehearsed, practiced a lot of time. So, of course, role plays, forum theater allows participants to expand their role repertoire. There's a lot of tools that you might perhaps already know, like role reversal, role rotation, where participants experience new roles or they see themselves from the outside. They're gonna see the other from inside, sort of from inside, or they're gonna experience what the other is feeling. What do you feel when someone is shouting at you? You were shouting in this scene at someone, now you're being shouted at, for instance, to make it very simple. And then I think gender and violence is a cultural problem. So it's a collective problem. It's not only perpetrators that are expressing a problematic culture. I think the whole society is a sort of in collusion with them. So I think we have to rehearse change as collectively as we can. So we try to give tools, in particular the forum theater, where we don't work only on the individual, but also on the group, because the session is going to end up, they're going to end up again with their friends, with their peers. And so they have to rehearse as collectively as possible. What are you going to do with them? How can you support each other when this session finishes? Okay, this is to say it very simply, but of course you can find more information in the manual on why and how.
My first question would be, I'm scared when I think about doing games and using theatrical tools and the work with perpetrators. I'm a shy person. I don't like to make myself very vulnerable towards groups. And my question to you would be, what do you recommend for trainers who have no experience doing this work, how they can overcome their own fear of making themselves vulnerable?
Yes, thank you, Anna. That's a really very important question. Of course, we are told not to play games when we become adults. This is something for kids. Our perpetrators are serious people, and yes, well, I think there are some very important tips, simple tips to keep in mind. Of course, if you wanna play games with perpetrators. By the way, I have a slide for that. Let me share it. Do you see my screen? So the first point is to get them interested, to find a way to get them interested, to find a vocabulary, to find stories. So they all have a culture where a game could somewhere happen. Some play cards, they play poker, they like to bluff or whatever. Perhaps their favorite singer or their favorite politician is constantly being trained through role play. You could find a way to explain how in their culture there might be some playful techniques. So for sure, you have to start with easy and gradual activities. I will share another. I will share the manual now. And so you see in the manual, there are very simple activities to start with. Okay, 3 things we have in common. It doesn't look like a game. We really try to create games or to collect games that don't look like games. 2 truths and 1 lies. People have to say 3 things about them, 2 being true and 1 being false. They love this. Nobody refuses this one. So start with games that you feel are sure with your group. So I think this one, for instance, 3 things we have in common. So we can start in pair. Okay, go in pair. Try to find 3 things you have in common with the other person, which can be, okay, we like pasta, ice cream, and beer. But of course, you could ask them to go for deeper things. What do you think about this? What do we have in common about this? So this you can also do as a group, and people love also to try to find out what do they have in common as a group, because at the beginning they think, oh, I have nothing to do with these other people. So this is a very important game to start with. So if you're very shy or whatever, if you're not comfortable with playing games, I think it's more easy to play some games than to have a conversation on violence with perpetrators. And these games will allow you to go to this conversation, but in a playful manner. So I think graduality is very important. We always take a lot of time in planning very gradually and always checking, okay, we're starting with this. This one, it's too early to do this game yet. Okay, so we're going to do another one like this, and then only then we're going to do this angel and devil game, for instance. So yeah, being very gradual. But as I told you, there's a whole part on very simple and easy games to start with. Mm-hmm. So another tip is perhaps try them out. Many games can be tried with a friend, with only 1 friend. There's a game I love. I think this is the easiest ever game. Is you have to know how to make an airplane with a piece of paper. Do you know how to make a paper airplane from 1 to 5? Yeah? Okay. So, but now this time with the people in pair, they have to put their hand behind their back. They will have to make an airplane with 1 hand each. Okay, people have to collaborate, and to make an airplane, they each have only 1 hand to do that. So they have to collaborate, they have to listen to each other. If there is overpowering, if there are some problematic dynamics, it's going to block a bit. But it's such an easy game that they will have an opportunity to understand what's going wrong, and they can try again. And so it gives them an opportunity to overcome their problematic way of doing. So this is a very, very simple game. And from there, you can build more complex activities. But this kind of game, you can try them out with your family members, with your friends. This is so easy. You can, anybody is fine with doing this game, from my experience at least.
Okay, so I would suggest we jump into the next question.
Okay.
If that's okay, yeah. Which is what, and I think you partially answered that already, actually. What is the best practice to introduce games to clients? And I think graduality was the word here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I do some activities that already are games, but without necessarily telling that it's games, so that I get them accustomed to do these activities. And so when I will propose something that is now called a game, I won't have resistance. Or I will do a game, perhaps once I've built it gradually, and we're playing a game, they enjoyed it a lot. I will use the word game a lot. Say, oh yeah, you like this game very much. Oh, I'm happy. Really happy. Oh, you like this kind of activity. Okay, so you would like to have more games. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna look for that. No problem. Next week we're gonna do more games. Okay, no problem.
How do you engage with hardcore, more receptive to playing games? Olivier.
Yeah, so there are games, I mean, here it's sort of, it's a tricky answer, but yeah, I will use games that seem to go in their way, like the 1, 2 truths, 1 lie. Or there's a game where people have to hide an object, has to disappear, and they have to pass it to each other while there's one person that is not watching. This kind of game where there's dissimulation, whereas they have to be tricky, smart, strategy games, they like a lot this kind of games. So of course I'm not gonna do a game on masculinity with very resistant perpetrators. I'm not gonna start with a game on gender, perhaps. Or I'm gonna look for which one, but to say again the question, Anna, sorry.
The question was about how to engage hardcore perpetrators, which I take to mean very hegemonic masculinity, toxic masculinity, fairly violent, set in their ways, you know.
Yeah. So activities that seem to go their way.
So with that you mean activities that make them feel good first, or
activity where power is at stake, for instance. They love activities where power is at stake. There's one where they are the leaders that require someone to do the leader, but then very quickly the leader is going to get in trouble. And that's the important part. They start, they're very proud, they're very happy. There's 1, 2, 3 grandma. I think it's known in every country. I don't know how you call it. In French, it's 1, 2, 3 sun. In Italy, 1, 2, 3 stars. I think in English, it's 1, 2, 3 grandma, when someone is looking at the wall and counting 1, 2, 3, and the participants have to come and they try to rob the power. Okay, and if they move, when I watch at them, I can send them back. Okay, so this is a game where the one is the leader and has the power. He has the power to send people back if they are moving. So they have to freeze every time he's watching at them. And then he counts again, 1, 2, 3, and he can send them. So he has power, but they're coming closer and closer. And so he's losing power. So here there's a lot of interesting work to do on his emotions. How do you feel? What's going on? And also asking the others to analyze, and then others are going to take the power, and they're very happy because many can take the power, they can take the lead, but then they lose it. So there's an interesting process on this. This is not a starting game, of course, but I think even there's a song in the States that was very famous in prisons that is called "Practice Looking Hard." So that's really a song that tells about how violence and looking hard is something learned and practiced every day. So, I mean, it should not be too difficult to talk about practicing other things. So it's exactly the same exercise. They have learned, they have practiced every day in front of the mirror. They're practicing looking hard, perhaps. So at least that's what the song says. So, so I'm trying to give them opportunities to do the same as they are doing, but in a new direction. I mean, I'm not building the direction, by the way, but I'm inviting them to step back and to find the direction they want to build from now on, since the hard direction is getting them in trouble. I'm not sure I'm answering. I don't know.
No, I feel like you're answering the question, that you
Okay.
look at the structure behind the behavior, and you're looking at how it is theater, you know, and then how you can interrupt that with the theater and the tools, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of the other questions, I mean, answering the other questions, we already answered that one. I mean, very gradual. I'm not gonna do a weird game with very resistant perpetrators. Very gradual, and I will think really a lot before which one I will try it, of course, with friends or whatever, whoever, colleagues.
That actually brings me to a really interesting question. Which situations would you say do you not recommend using games or theatrical tools in? Are there any situations where you say, no, this is not something where you should use these kind of tools?
No, well, there's one question. There's some questions I really like that I want to work on with perpetrators. For instance, how do you create intimacy without beyond sexuality? So this, I don't have a game yet to work on that. So then I'm not gonna use a game, because this is really a question I want to discuss. So then if there's something really I want to discuss, perhaps it might come out in a game. So there are angel and devil's game that go a lot on consent, on issues related to sexuality. So perhaps it might come out in the game. But if it doesn't, then this question I really want to tackle it without games. I really want to have this conversation. But no, I have really no issue with using games. I mean, it's not easy to work with perpetrators, but I think it's easier with games, from my experience.
I have a question, Anna.
Yes.
Any suggestions as to how to approach? So if we're working with persons who do harm, because I find perpetrators to be a bit harsh. How do we negotiate with prison authorities? Because when you say you're coming to play games, they may not understand what we're trying to do, and I understand it as a developmental tool. How would you suggest to win over prison authorities to say that you're coming to do work with the prisoners? It's not games in the way in which we think of how children play games, but it's a developmental tool.
Yeah, I never used the word game and theater until a certain point of the program. Then it depends. So neither with the authorities, neither with the perpetrators.
What language do you use?
We're gonna use exercises. We're gonna use a lot of exercises, and perhaps I'm gonna use words like, okay, we're gonna try to do this playfully, but we're gonna use exercise to work on emotional intelligence, to work on resistance, to work on power. And we're going to do many exercises where people will have to work on their own stories, and they will have the possibility to share. It will be very interactive. Interactive is a key word. Exercise and interactive at the beginning. Then slowly, we're going to use words like rehearsing, practicing,